I didn't plan on staying more than 2 nights. My uncle lives 4 hours north of me in a town so small it doesn't show up correctly on most maps. Just a cluster of houses off a state road surrounded by flat land and old pine trees that go on for miles in every direction. He called me the second week of March and asked if I could come help sort through my Aunt Carol's belongings. She had passed in January. He said every time he tried to do it himself, he'd get through maybe one drawer and then just sit down on the floor and stop moving. So I packed a bag and drove up on a Thursday. The weather was already changing when I got on the highway. Not snowing yet, just that heavy gray sky that sits low and doesn't move. The temperature had been dropping for 3 days straight. The radio kept cutting to forecasts. A late March system pushing down from Canada. 6 to 10 inches expected overnight, possibly more in the northern counties. I figured I'd finish the sorting before it hit and drive back Friday morning. That didn't happen. By the time I pulled into my uncle's driveway that evening, the first flakes were already coming down, light at first, the lazy kind that floats more than falls. My uncle met me at the door. We ate dinner together, and we didn't say much. He's never been a big talker, and he'd gotten even quieter since Carol passed. After dinner, he showed me the spare room upstairs. Small room, one window looking out over the backyard, and the tree line beyond it, a bed pushed against the wall, a dresser, and in the corner near the window, a wooden chair, dark stain, high back, armrests worn smooth from years of use. He stood in the doorway and told me Carol used to sit in that chair every single night before bed. Said she'd read, or sometimes just watched the snow if it was coming down. Said she did it their whole marriage, 40 years. I told him the room was fine. He nodded and went back downstairs. I set my bag on the dresser and looked out the window before turning the lamp on. The snow was picking up, coming down at an angle now, not floating anymore, driven sideways by the wind starting to build. The backyard was already half covered. The grass was disappearing under it. The outside light above the back door cast a pale yellow cone over about 20 feet of yard, and everything past that was just gray and moving and dark. The chair was angled toward that window. Made sense. You could watch the whole yard from there. I got into bed around 10:30 with the lamps still on low. The wind had picked up outside. I could hear it moving around the corners of the house, that low, steady pressure, snow ticking against the glass in small waves. I read on my phone for a while and fell asleep before 11. I don't know what time I woke up. There was no sound I could point to. I just came awake all at once, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The lamp was still on low, casting the room in that dim yellow light. The wind outside had gotten heavier. I could hear it pushing against the house steadily now, and the snow against the window had changed. It wasn't ticking anymore. It was a constant soft hiss, the kind that means it's coming down hard and sideways. I lay still for a few seconds. Then it came. 3 taps on the window. Not loud, not frantic, just 3 slow, deliberate taps, like a knuckle on glass, evenly spaced. I sat up. My eyes went straight to the window. The outside light was still on, over the back door. I could see the snow driving through it hard, nearly horizontal now, the yard completely buried, the tree line at the far end invisible behind the white. I stared at the glass for a full minute. Nothing. No shape, no shadow. Just snow hammering the pane in waves and the darkness behind it. I told myself it was a branch. There was a tree on the left side of the yard. Wind does things in a storm. Ice builds up, branches flex and tap. I lay back down. 2 minutes later, it came again. 3 taps. Same rhythm, same spacing, slow and even, like someone who wasn't in a hurry. I got up this time. I warped to the window. The floorboards creaked under me. I got close enough that my breath fobbed the glass. I leaned in and looked out into the storm. The outside light lit up the yard directly below, and I looked at the snow. Smooth, untouched. 8 inches of flat white surface with nothing in it. No marks, no prints, no disturbance of any kind. Just the wind moving the surface snow in thin sheets across the yard. I stood there for probably 2 full minutes with my face close to the cold glass, watching. Nothing moved below, except the storm itself. The tapping didn't come again. I stepped back from the window. My hands were cold. The room felt colder than before. That's when I looked at the chair. It was facing the bed. I hadn't looked at it when I first woke up. I'd gone straight to the window. But now I was standing 2 feet from it, and it was squared directly toward the bed. Not angled, not shifted a few degrees. Both front legs even, both back legs even. The seat and high back aimed straight at the mattress, like someone had pulled it around and set it down with purpose. My stomach dropped hard. I stood there in that cold room, with the storm driving snow against the window behind me, and I just stared at that chair. I didn't move for a long time. I was listening. Wind, snow on glass, the house settling, nothing else. No footsteps in the hall, no sound from downstairs, nothing. I walked over to it. I crouched down and looked at the floor in the lamplight. Old hardwood, dusty near the baseboard. I ran my fingers along the floor near the rear legs. The dust was smeared there, not a clean line, just disturbed, like something had dragged lightly across it recently. I picked the chair up with both hands and carried it back to the window. I set it down carefully, lined the front legs flush with the baseboard, the seat facing the yard. I stepped back, stood there, watched it for a full minute. The wind hit the glass hard, and the whole pane shook once. The chair didn't move. I got back into bed, left the lamp on, lay on my side, facing the corner, with my eyes on that chair. Outside, the storm was at full force now. The window was almost completely white, snow plastered against it, the outside light barely visible through the thickness of it. The house made sounds, deep creaks in the walls, the groan of the roof under the weight. Normal storm sounds. I knew that. I kept telling myself that. I watched the chair until my eyes couldn't stay open. I woke up in the gray morning light. I turned over before I did anything else, before I sat up, before I checked the time. The chair was facing the bed, same position, both legs even, squared directly at me. I sat up slowly. The storm had dropped to light flurries. The window was gray and quiet. I could see the backyard through it, buried deep, the tree line just a dark blur. The outside light had turned off automatically with the daylight. Everything out there was perfectly still. I got up and walked to the chair, crouched down in the pale morning light, and this time I saw something I hadn't seen in the lamplight the night before. 2 thin drag lines in the dust, along the right rear leg, clean edges, about 4 inches long, scraped in the direction away from the window toward the bed. I didn't touch the chair. I stood up and looked at it for a long time. My jaw was tight. My hands were cold. I had put that chair back against the window with my own hands. I had stood there and watched it. I had lain in that bed, facing it for over an hour before I fell asleep. And at some point in that storm, in the dark, without making a single sound I could hear, something had moved it back. Same position both nights. Square, even, facing the bed. I packed my bag without turning my back to that corner. I don't think I decided to do it that way. My body just did it on its own. Downstairs, my uncle had coffee going. The kitchen windows were frosted at the corners. Outside, the snow had stopped, and everything was buried and white and completely silent. The way it gets after a big storm, when the world just shuts down. The road out front was drifted in. The neighbor's truck across the way was buried to the door handles on one side. My uncle asked how I slept. I said fine. He poured his cup and looked out the kitchen window at the backyard. Then he said, quietly, almost to himself, "She always said that room held warmth differently than the rest of the house. Said it never really got empty." I set my cup down. I asked him, as evenly as I could manage, whether he had come upstairs at any point in the night. He turned and looked at me. Not surprised, not confused, just this calm, steady look. Like he'd been waiting for that question since I walked in the door 2 days ago. He said no. I finished my coffee. I helped him seal 2 more boxes. Then I told him I needed to get on the road before the afternoon freeze set in and made the highway dangerous. He walked me out to the car. I cleared the windshield while he stood on the porch steps with his arms crossed, watching the tree line at the back of the yard. The snow was crusted over hard. The whole property looked sealed, locked in. Before I got in the car, he said, quiet enough that the wind almost took it, She always put that chair back herself, every single morning, facing the room, not the window. Said the window was for looking out at the world. The chair was for watching over what mattered. I looked at him standing on those steps in the grey March cold. He turned and went back inside without waiting for me to respond. I drove 4 hours home in silence. The fields on both sides of the highway were flat and white and endless. The defroster ran the whole way. I didn't turn the radio on. I kept thinking about those drag marks, 4 inches in the dust, clean edges, pulled away from the window in the middle of the night during a blizzard when no one came upstairs and nothing made a sound. And I kept thinking about the tapping on the window, 3 knocks, slow, even, and when I looked out, there was nothing below, no marks in the snow, 8 inches of untouched white surface directly under the glass. Something tapped that window from the outside, something but left no trace in the snow beneath it, and something moved that chair, twice, quietly and completely in the dark, put it back exactly where it wanted to be, the same position both nights, facing the bed, facing me, like it was doing what it had always done, watching over what mattered. I've stayed in 5 different places since that March. A motel in Columbus, my sister's guest room, a friend's couch, a rental cabin last fall. Every single time I walk into a room, I find every chair a note where it's facing, and every morning, before I sit up, before I check my phone, I look at the corner first. Last week, I woke up in my own apartment at 2 in the morning for no reason I could name. The first thing I did was look at the chair in the corner of my room. It was facing the bed. I live alone. I had not moved it. I didn't sleep again that night. I took a trail maintenance contract in northern Wisconsin that March. Solo job, 3 miles into the tree line. The forestry office gave me a small cabin to stay in. 1 room, wood stove, 1 front door, 1 window facing the trail, 1 small window above the kitchen sink on the north side facing the trees. First day on site. An older worker named Daryl stopped me at the parking lot. He'd worked those trails for over 20 years. He said it like he was telling me where to find extra firewood. He said, if something comes to that cabin at night and uses a voice you recognize, don't answer it. Don't open the door. Don't look at it through the glass. I smiled. He didn't. He said the families who lived on this land for generations didn't build deep in these woods for a reason. Something moves through here at night, as for a long time. Just don't talk back to it. I nodded and got in my truck. I thought he was the kind of old guy who liked scaring new hires. 3 weeks later, I stopped thinking that. The storm came on a Thursday. The forecast had been talking about it all week. 10 to 14 inches overnight. Wind gusts up to 50. The temperature had been dropping since Tuesday, slow and steady, the ground already frozen hard under the existing snow. By Thursday afternoon, the sky was that flat white color. That means it's coming soon, and it's going to be serious. I stocked the stove with extra wood before dark, filled both water jugs, ate early. By 9 at night, the snow was already heavy, hitting the front window in waves, driven sideways by the wind. The cabin creaked under the pressure of it, not dramatically, just that slow, constant flex of old wood under a load it's carried before. I got on the cot around 10. Stove was running solid. Pulled the blanket up. The wind outside was a steady low roar through the pine canopy. Constant. I fell asleep listening to it. Something pulled me out of sleep, no sound I could name. I just opened my eyes, and I was completely awake. Not groggy. Awake like a switch had flipped. I looked at my watch. 2009 a.m. The stove had dropped to coals. The cabin was darker and colder. I could feel the temperature had dropped just from the air on my face above the blanket. Outside, the storm was still going. Wind pushing against the walls in long waves. Snow hissing against the window glass. I lay there and did not move. Then from right outside the front door, tap. I held my breath. Tap. Same spot. Same pressure. Tap. Slow. Each one separated by the exact same gap. Not random. Not wind against wood. Something was pacing each tap deliberately, with the same weight and the same pause between them. I sat up. The blanket fell off my legs. I sat on the edge of the cot in the dark, and I just listened with my whole body still. The wind, the snow on the glass. Somewhere out in the forest, a pine branch cracking under ice weight. Then tap, tap, tap. Same door, same patience. I grabbed the flashlight off the shelf. I walked to the front door slowly. The floorboards were loud under each step, and I hated that. I pressed my palm flat against the door. The cold came straight through the wood into my hand. I put my face close to the gap between the door and the frame. I said, "Who's there?" Nothing. Is someone out there? Tap, tap, tap. Right against the wood, right at my face. I made the decision I shouldn't have made. I told myself it could be another trail worker caught in a storm, could be a hiker, could be someone hurt and freezing. I slid the bolt back. I opened the door. Wind drove straight into my face, hard and cold. Snow hit my eyes, and I squinted against it. I raised the flashlight and swept it across the porch. Empty. I swept it left, right, nothing. I leaned out and pointed it down at the ground in front of the porch steps. The snow was smooth. I stared at that. I moved the beam slowly across the entire area in front of the cabin. 10 inches of flat, unbroken, undisturbed snow, no boot prints, no drag marks, no depression of any kind. Fresh snow still falling and settling on a surface that looked like nothing had touched it in hours. The tapping had come from directly on the other side of that door, and there was nothing in the snow. I shut the door, bolted it. I stood with my back flat against it, and I did not move for a long time. The cold from the wood was going through my shirt, into my back. My feet were cold on the floor. I just stood there and breathed and looked at the dark room in front of me. I rebuilt the stove, got the flame back up, sat on the cot with my back against the wall and the flashlight across my knees. 10 minutes passed. Then from the north wall, the wall to my left, tap, tap, tap. I turned my head toward it slowly. 30 seconds of silence. Then the south wall, behind me, tap, tap, tap. I stood up off the cot. It was moving around the outside of the cabin, each wall in turn, slow and even, taking its time, like it was checking each one, like it was looking for a way in, or just wanted me to know it was circling. Heil! I kept rotating so my back was never against the wall the sound was coming from. I stood in the center of that one room, and I turned and I listened, and my jaw was so tight my teeth hurt. It went around twice, then it stopped. Complete silence except for the storm. I stood in the middle of the room and waited. Then right outside the small window above the kitchen sink, close and clear, a voice said my name, my full name, first and last, in my father's voice. My father had been dead for 3 years. It wasn't exactly his voice. It was close, like something had heard a recording of him once and practiced it. The tone was right. The way he said my first name, the slight emphasis he always put on the first syllable. That part was right, but the weight behind it was wrong, empty. Like the voice was a shell with nothing living inside it. I did not move. It said my name again. I pressed my lips together and said nothing. I thought about what Daryl had said. Don't answer it. Don't look at it directly. Don't engage. I stared at the far wall and kept my mouth shut. A third time, softer now, almost gentle, like it was trying to sound patient. I said nothing. Then I heard breathing, just outside that kitchen window, slow, deep, steady, the kind of breathing something makes when it is standing completely still in the cold, and it is not tired, and it is not in a hurry, just standing there, just breathing, just waiting to see what I would do. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got to 31 before it stopped. The storm noise came back fully. Wind and snow and the groan of trees. The breathing was gone. My name was not said again. I sat on that cot until daylight came, gray through the front window. I kept the fire going. I kept the flashlight on. I kept my mouth completely shut, and I did not go near any window for the rest of that night. When it was light enough, I went outside. I walked around the full perimeter of the cabin. I looked at the snow pressed against each wall. North wall, smooth. South wall, smooth. Front, smooth. I got to the back corner where the north wall met the rear wall, and I stopped walking. The snow at that corner was packed down. Not a clean footprint, just a compressed oval shape in the snow, like something very heavy had been standing in that exact spot and not moving for a long time. The snow around it was undisturbed. No tracks leading to it. No tracks leading away. Just that one compressed area, like whatever made it had appeared there and then stopped existing there without moving through the snow at all. And on the log wall just above it, at about chest height, there were 4 scratches in the wood, horizontal, side by side, spaced like fingers, dragged left to right through the bark layer into the pale wood underneath, deep enough that the edges were clean cuts, not tears. I put my fingers next to them. The wood inside the scratches was dry, not frozen, fresh. I went back inside, radioed the forestry office, told them the cabin was fine. I finished the contract. 3 more weeks. The tapping never came back. My name was never spoken again, but I found that compressed oval in the snow at the back corner 2 more times. Same spot, same size. Once after a fresh snowfall had covered everything. Once on a completely dry, frozen morning with no new precipitation. Always at that corner. Always directly below that kitchen window. Always facing in. I called Darryl after I drove out. I told him what happened. There was a long pause on the line. He said, "You didn't answer it." I said no. He said, "Good." Then he said, "The ones that answer it, they come back different. Every single one." I asked him what he meant by different. He said, "They stop being bothered by things that should bother people. They go quiet. And after a while they stop coming back to town at all." He hung up. I've thought about that conversation a lot since March, about what answering would have meant, about what was standing at that back corner in a blizzard, breathing slow and steady, saying my name in a dead man's voice. It knew my father's voice. It knew my name. It knew exactly which voice to use to make me want to open that window. That's the part I keep coming back to, not the tapping, not the circling, not the scratches in the logs. The fact that it had done its homework on me before it ever showed up at that door, like it had been watching long before that night, like that Thursday storm was just when it finally decided to introduce itself. My name is Marcus. Me and my friend Lily still don't talk about that Thursday, not because she doesn't remember, because every time one of us starts, the other one goes quiet, and neither of us wants to finish it. We were second-year students. Statistics exam that Monday. Neither of us had properly touched the notes. Lily texted me after the last lecture and said, "Let's find somewhere quiet." Library was packed. Common room had music going. Someone had a speaker in the main study hall. Lily said she knew a spot, the back side of the east building, a covered walkway between the lecture hall wall and the old maintenance block. She'd used it in autumn, always empty. A couple of benches, outdoor plug sockets, no foot traffic. We grabbed coffees from the campus shop and headed over around 5. The sky had been sitting low and grey all day, that heavy, flat grey that doesn't move. Cold coming in from the north. When we came out the back door of the east building, the wind hit us straight in the face. Wet and sharp, the first flakes were already coming down. Light ones, the kind that disappear before they hit the ground. We sat down, spread the notes between us, and figured we'd get an hour in before the weather got serious. We were wrong about that. 40 minutes in, the snow had thickened up properly, not gradually. It just changed. Heavy flakes now, wind picking up behind them, driving the snow sideways under the covered walkway roof and across the concrete at our feet. The temperature had dropped hard. I could feel it in my ears and on my knuckles. The outdoor light above the back door clicked on automatically, pale yellow. It covered maybe 15 feet of walkway, and then the light just faded out into grey. Everything past that edge was dark and white and moving. Lily was talking through a formula. I was writing it down. Normal, completely normal. Then she stopped mid-sentence. I looked up. She was staring at the floor of the walkway, about 6 feet in front of the bench, just staring at it with her pen still in the air. I looked at the floor. There were wet footprints on the concrete, fresh ones, starting from the dark end of the walkway and walking toward our bench. Clear prints, both feet, normal walking stride, coming from the direction of the field where the maintenance block ended and the open ground began. They stopped 4 feet from where we were sitting. That was it. They just stopped, mid-stride, 1 foot forward, 1 foot behind it, like whoever made them had been walking toward us and then simply ceased to exist 4 feet away. I looked at Lily. She looked at me. I stood up slowly and looked behind the bench, thinking maybe someone had stepped around us. Nothing. I looked left along the wall. Nothing. I looked right. The walkway was empty, just us. I crouched down next to the prints. The concrete around them was wet from general snowmelt, but the prints themselves were darker, wetter, fresher. The edges were still sharp. These had been made recently, minutes ago at most. I put my hand next to one of them, bigger than my hand, whiter. I stood back up. Lily said very quietly, "Marcus, those weren't there 5 minutes ago." I knew that. I had been looking at that exact section of floor when she was talking through the formula. There had been nothing there. At some point in the last few minutes, something had walked down that walkway from the dark end toward our bench and stopped 4 feet away, and we hadn't heard a single footstep. On a concrete floor, in complete quiet except for the snow and wind. We hadn't heard one step. I looked at the dark end of the walkway where the light faded out. Snow coming down hard past the edge of the roof. The field beyond completely invisible in the white. I said, "Hello?" My voice went out into the snow and just disappeared. Lily grabbed the edge of my sleeve from behind. I said it again, louder. "Is someone there?" Nothing came back. I took 1 step toward the dark end of the walkway. Lily said quietly and very clearly, "Please don't." I stopped. The snow hissed against the concrete. The wind pushed a low gust through the walkway that moved Lily's papers off the bench. Neither of us moved to pick them up. I was looking at the dark end of the walkway and trying to see past the point where the light stopped. Trying to find a shape. Trying to find anything. Just gray and white and moving snow. And the outline of the maintenance block corner, disappearing into it. Then I saw the breath, in the dark just past the edge of the light, right at the boundary where the yellow glow faded out. There was a breath, a slow, visible cloud of warm air in the cold, there and then fading, then again, slow and even and steady, like something standing in the dark just past where we could see it, breathing, patiently, just standing there and breathing and looking at us from the dark. It was close. Whatever was exhaling the air was maybe 10 feet away. Lily saw it the same moment I did. I felt her hand tighten on my sleeve. We watched it happen 3 times. Slow breath, fade, slow breath, fade, slow breath, fade, slow breath. The 4th one didn't come, just gone. No sound of movement, no footsteps on the concrete, just the breathing stopped, and the dark at the end of the walkway was just dark again. The footprints were gone, not faded, not smeared, gone. The concrete where they had been was the same uniform wet gray as the rest of the floor. No marks, no outline, like they had never been there. Lily said, "We're leaving right now." I didn't argue. We shoved everything into our bags without organizing any of it. The papers on the floor we left, the coffees we left. We went straight to the back door of the east building. My hand on the handle was shaking slightly, not dramatically, just that fine motor thing that happens when your body is running on adrenaline and trying not to show it. We went inside. The corridor was bright and warm, fluorescent lights, voices somewhere down the hall, the sound of a door closing on an upper floor. Normal. Everything in there was completely normal. I looked through the small window in the back door into the walkway. The outdoor light was still on. The snow was still coming down. The bench was there with the scattered papers on the wet floor. The walkway was empty. No shape, no prints, no breath cloud in the dark, just an empty covered walkway behind a college building in a snowstorm. We walked out through the main entrance without talking. Snow was still falling hard. Campus was nearly empty. We stood at the bus stop and waited, cold and quiet. Before her bus came, Lily turned to me and said, "Those prints weren't there, and then they were there, and then they were gone." I said, "Yeah," she said, "and something was breathing right there." I said, "Yeah." Her bus came, she got on, she didn't look back. I passed that exam on Monday, I don't know how. I've walked past the east building plenty of times since then. Daytime, summer, normal weather. It looks exactly like what it is. just a back walkway between two old buildings, but I have not gone back there after dark. I have not gone back there alone, and I have not gone back there when it is snowing. And sometimes when I'm in a room and there's a dark corner I can't fully see, I catch myself watching it, not for shapes, not for figures, for breath, that small, slow cloud of warm air in the cold, because whatever was standing at the end of that walkway in the dark, 4 feet from where we were sitting, watching us without making a sound, it was warm, and I keep thinking about what that means. Something that leaves no prints, makes no sound, disappears when you look directly at it. But it was warm enough to breathe visible air in the cold. It was alive. That's the part I can't let go of. I was the last unit still running that night. The roads were gone. Not bad. Gone. Visibility was down to maybe 30 feet past my hood. The snow was coming in so hard and flat, it looked solid in the headlights. I had chains on and 4-wheel drive, and I was still doing 15 miles an hour on what was supposed to be a county highway. Dispatch came over the radio around 11:40. Her voice was different, not panicked, just careful. The way people get when something doesn't add up, but they're passing it along anyway. She said a woman had called in from somewhere off Route 9, said there was a vehicle stalled near her property, said there was a small child inside it, alone, no license plate, no make or model. Signal had cut out halfway through the call. The woman hadn't called back. The GPS ping was rough, putting it somewhere near an old stretch of farmland past the county turnoff. Nothing out there. Nobody had worked that land in years. I should have logged in and let someone follow up in the morning. But she said a child. I told dispatch I'd go check. It took me 20 minutes to find the turnoff. No marker, no sign, just a gap in the tree line and 2 old fence posts, half buried in snow on either side. The kind of thing you miss unless you're moving slow and looking hard. The drive-in hadn't been plowed since the previous winter at least. I made it maybe halfway down before something solid caught the undercarriage and jolted the whole truck sideways. I cut the engine, left the hazards going, and got out on foot. The snow was deep, up past my shins with every step, heavy wet, March snow that packed into the gap between my boot and my pants with every stride. The wind was low out here, blocked by the tree line on both sides of the drive, but the snow was still coming straight down in thick sheets. My flashlight reached maybe 20 feet ahead of me. I walked. No tracks anywhere on the drive, no tire marks going in, no footprints. The snow on that entire drive was smooth and unbroken in every direction, like nothing had come down it in days. Then the house came into view. Big old farmhouse. The kind built at the turn of the century when people didn't worry about aesthetics. Just square and tall and functional. One side of the roof had sagged badly. The front porch had partially collapsed inward. The boards buckled and dark with rot. Every window was dark. The whole structure had that specific stillness of a building that hasn't had a living person inside it in a long time. And right before the bend in the drive, parked at a strange angle with the front end pointed toward the tree line, like it had tried to turn around and stopped, was the car. Mid-sized sedan, engine running, headlights on, but dim, like the battery was low. Windows completely fogged over from the inside. I could see a shape in the front seat through the fogged glass, not moving. I walked up to the driver's side and knocked on the window. Nothing. The shape in the seat didn't turn, didn't flinch, just sat there. I went around to the passenger side and tried the handle. It opened. The heat that came out was thick, stale, like air that had been breathing in a closed space for hours, and underneath it something else. A smell I couldn't immediately name, sharp and faintly metallic, like wet iron. It settled in my throat and stayed there. The woman was in the driver's seat, both hands wrapped around the steering wheel, gripping it like she was bracing for a collision that hadn't come yet. A small child was asleep in her lap, face turned into her chest, one small hand curled up near his chin. The inside of the windshield was covered in marks, not frost, not condensation patterns, handprints and streaks, like someone had been pressing their palms and fingers against the glass repeatedly from the inside, dozens of them overlapping. long smears and short jabs, the whole surface covered in it. I said, "Mom, are you all right?" She didn't startle. She turned her head toward me slowly. Her face was calm. Not the calm of someone who had just been rescued. The calm of someone who had been sitting in that car long enough. That calm was the only thing left. She said he didn't want to stay in the house anymore. I looked at the house. Dark, collapsed porch. Not a single light anywhere in it. I asked if she was the one who had called for help. She shook her head once, slow. I asked who had called. She didn't answer that. She looked down at the child in her lap and brushed his hair back with 2 fingers. She said, "He doesn't like the snow. It makes him remember things." The child stirred slightly under her hand. His eyes stayed closed. I told her I could get them both somewhere warm. Back to my truck, get the heat going properly. She could tell me what happened and we'd get her sorted out. She looked past me, not at me, past me, at something behind my left shoulder. She said quietly, "You're not supposed to be here yet." I turned around. The field beside the drive, the tree line beyond it, the dark face of the farmhouse with its collapsed porch and dead windows. Nothing. Nobody. I turned back to her. I tried the radio. Static. I moved position, stepped back from the car, angled it different ways. Still static. Nothing but white noise. I asked her again to come with me. She didn't answer. Just held the child a little tighter against her chest. I looked at the child properly then, for the first time. His color was wrong. Not winter pale. Something else. A gray undertone to his skin that didn't look like cold. Like the blood had pulled back from the surface a long time ago. His lips were slightly parted. His chest was moving. He was breathing. But he looked like he hadn't been outside or in real light in a very long time. Then she said, still looking past me, "They're watching you." I looked back at the house. The windows were dark. The porch was still. The snow was coming straight down through the pale beam of the car's headlights and piling on the collapsed boards. But the feeling that hit me standing there was something I had felt maybe twice in my whole career. That absolute physical certainty that something is behind you or beside you or watching you from somewhere close, even when your eyes say empty. My neck went tight. My shoulders pulled in. Not because I decided to react that way. My body just did it. I turned back to the car. I said I was taking the child. That whatever else was happening we could sort out, but he needed warmth, and he needed it now. She looked at me for the first time with actual focus, like I had finally said something that registered. Her hands were still on the steering wheel. I reached in and took the child carefully. He was light, too light, like picking up something hollow. He made a small sound, but didn't wake. As I lifted him out of her lap, I looked at the windshield. In the fog of the glass, written in the condensation from inside, clear and deliberate, the letters still running slightly at the bottom strokes. "He is mine." I backed out of the car with the child against my shoulder. The moment both my feet were on the snow, the engine died, headlights off. He'd gone. Total silence, like the car had been waiting for that exact moment. I turned around. She was gone. The driver's seat was empty. Door still closed. No sound. No movement anywhere around the car. The snow on the ground on both sides of the vehicle was smooth and untouched. In the beam of my flashlight, no footprints. Nothing. I stood there in the dark and the falling snow with this child against my shoulder, and I swept my flashlight across the car, across the drive, across the field, across the face of that dark house. Nothing. Nobody. Just snow coming straight down in the silence. The child moved in my arms. His head shifted against my shoulder, then his eyes opened. Dark eyes, very steady, looking directly at my face. He said, clear as anything, in a voice too calm and too flat for a child that small, "I told her you would come instead." I looked down the drive toward the road. All I could see was snow. The EMTs reached us at the county turnoff just before midnight. I had carried him all the way back to the truck, had the heat going, had him wrapped in the emergency blanket from the kit behind the seat. He didn't say another word the whole time, just sat there wrapped in that blanket and watched me with those flat dark eyes. When the EMTs took him, he watched me over the shoulder of the paramedic the whole way to the ambulance door. We never found the car. I drove back down that road the following morning after the storm cleared. followed my own boot tracks in the snow all the way to where I had left my truck. The drive beyond that point was completely smooth, unbroken, no tire marks, no footprints, no depression in the snow where a car had been sitting with its engine running, no tracks of any kind. The farmhouse was there, collapsed porch, dark windows, exactly as I had seen it. I walked up to the front, looked through the gap where the porch had buckled, looked through the ground floor windows, empty, bare floors, no furniture, no sign that anyone had been inside recently, except on the inside of one of the ground floor windows, the one facing the drive, the one that would have had a direct line of sight to where that car had been parked. Handprints on the glass, dozens of them, pressed from the inside. Long smears and palm prints covering the entire lower half of the pane, the same pattern as the inside of the windshield. I walked back to my truck and drove out and filed a report that said I had responded to a call, located a child on foot near an abandoned property, and transported him to emergency services. I did not include the rest of it. They placed him with child services. No match on any missing persons report. No record of the phone call on any carrier. The number that had called dispatch was traced to a cell tower 12 miles away, and then the trail ended. I checked back 3 weeks later. He had been placed with a foster family in the next county. They said he was quiet, that he didn't talk much, that sometimes they found him standing at the window at night, looking out at the road. I think about him more than I should, and I think about what she said when she looked past me at the dark field. You're not supposed to be here yet. Not yet. Not you're not supposed to be here. Not yet. Like I was expected. Like this was always going to happen. Like the only question was the timing. I still run nights. I still go out in bad weather when no one else will. But I don't go down unmarked drives alone anymore. And when dispatch gives me a call that doesn't add up from the start, I log it and I wait for morning. Because whatever was in that house watching from the window with its hands on the glass, it knew I was coming before I did. And I don't want to find out what happens the second time.